Robert J. Carver holds his breath and presses the SCR-300 handset assembly tightly against his left chest, the moment a weak burst of static escapes from the speaker grill caked with dirt. He stands motionless, lowers his chin close to his collar, and watches the tree line behind the rows of gray gravestones. 84-year-old man once served as a forward observer in the U.S. Army Field Artillery in the Ardennes in 1944. His wrinkled hand grips the cracked plastic casing where a frayed coiled cord rests against the cold stone surface of the gravestone. The radio static stretches and breaks from the speaker grill as the SCR-300 battery continues to weaken. Carver uses his worn thumb to hold down the push-to-talk button to maintain the unstable signal connection. When the plastic of the handset scrapes against the stone and produces a dry, rasping sound, Carver jerks the device back and hides it inside his coat. Fingers numbed by the early cold slip off the button, forcing him to use both hands to lock the handset assembly in place. Carver uses his coat flap to wipe away the dried mud on the speaker grill before gently placing the device on the stone ledge of the gravestone. He holds the frayed, coiled cord with his fingers so it does not scrape directly across the engraved letters on the gray surface. He keeps this handset because it is directly tied to the moment he called artillery danger close onto his own position to stop German armor in the Ardennes. A stream of white vapor leaves his mouth, making Carver immediately cover his nose with his free hand to reduce the visible breath. The deep click of the depressed push-to-talk button makes him step back once, his heels sinking into the damp soil beside the base of the stone. Carver curls his body inward with the handset pressed close to his mouth, making it physically impossible to stand upright before the gravestone or continue any civilian behavior. In December 1944, in the Ardennes, Europe, Robert J. Carver kneels in deep snow and uses his bare hand to scrape ice from the plastic casing of the SCR-300 radio. He wears heavy binoculars against his chest and runs numb fingertips along the edge of a folded map soaked with snowmelt. Sparse pine trees cover the high hillside that looks straight down onto a crossroads, trembling with the steel track engine noise of a tiger tank. Carver presses his body into the wall of a shallow foxhole, making the thick wool coat scrape against the frozen earth with a rough sound. His hand grips the SCR-300 handset tightly, pressing the speaker grill to his ear to catch broken static through the whistling wind. Technician 5th grade, Harold J. Mercer, a radio operator with the U.S. Army Field Artillery, lies directly behind Carver's heels in the same foxhole and uses his coat flap to cover the spare battery to keep it warm. Mercer pulls down hard on Carver's coat hem to conceal the coiled radio cord exposed on the white snow. "He's confirmed the line," Mercer says briefly into the handset as the tank tracks begin to shake the ground at the bottom of the hole. Carver uses a grease pencil to mark a point on the plastic-covered map, then immediately pulls his hand back inside his wool sleeve to avoid the cold. He lowers the long antenna of the radio close to the ground and covers it with a thin layer of snow to reduce any reflection. Carver's breath forms a thick white cloud, forcing him to press his face into his palm to break it apart. Road salt and melting snow stick to the speaker grill and form a damp film, reducing the sound from behind to low muffled noise. "Stay silent," Carver orders Mercer as the dark shape of an armored vehicle passes between the tree trunks below the valley. The tank tracks crush ice on the road, creating a cracking sound that travels through the earth wall directly into Carver's jawbone. He switches to his right hand to hold the handset, his thumb resting on the worn push-to-talk button without making a press. Mercer holds the radio cord at Carver's waist to keep it from catching on the dry branches around the rim of the foxhole. A burst of random machine gun fire from the valley lashes into the pine trees, sending wood fragments and snow down onto both men's shoulders. Carver freezes all movement, his eyes fixed on the tiger that has stopped in the center of the crossroads. The radio static weakens as battery voltage drops in the cold air, forcing Carver to press the handset tighter against his ear. The muscles in Carver's ankles begin to cramp from kneeling motionless too long on the hard ground. He uses his fingertips to brush a thin layer of snow off the binocular lenses to observe German infantry jumping down from the armored vehicle. "Won't he wait for the signal?" Mercer whispers when he sees Carver about to raise the handset to his mouth. Carver lowers his arm and presses it against his side to keep the handset assembly from making any visible movement against the white background. The plastic casing of the SCR-300 handset gains another small crack from the pressure of Carver's tightened grip. The tank engine suddenly roars, shaking the entire foxhole wall and causing snow at the rim to begin sliding down. Carver holds his breath completely, freezing his body with the handset pressed tight against his chest as the steel tracks begin to turn toward the hillside. The lead Tiger tank rotates its turret toward the hillside, forcing Carver to press his face into the snow at the rim of the foxhole. Carver raises the SCR-300 handset close to his ear to filter sound through the heavy static from the speaker grill caked with dirt. Harold J. Mercer kneels beside him, reaches under the base of the SCR-300 radio, and yanks the metal latch to replace the spare battery. The electrical jolt from seating the new battery makes Carver's numbed hand twitch lightly with the vibration of the set. Carver's thumb slips off the push-to-talk button because a thin layer of ice on his wool glove removes friction. He rubs his palm hard against the wool fabric on his thigh to dry the snow moisture on the handset's plastic surface. Vibrations from tank tracks grinding on the frozen road pass through the earth wall and drop a large sheet of snow onto Carver's map. Mercer brushes the snow off the map and holds the paper corners tight so the wind cannot carry them away. A burst of German machine gun fire sweeps the pine tree top above, sending dry bark and snow down onto Carver's shoulders. Carver pulls his shoulders inward and stretches the coiled cord to keep the handset from catching on a protruding root inside the hole. Radio static increases in intensity from electromagnetic interference as the tank column moves into close range. The Tiger's gun barrel slides past the binoculars, and its steel shadow blocks the light at the rim of the hole. Carver marks new coordinates on the plastic-covered map, but the grease pencil tip breaks under pressure from his cold, stiffened hand. Mercer takes another grease pencil from his coat pocket and presses it firmly into Carver's palm. Exhaust smoke from the tank engine pours into the hole, making Carver choke and pull his wool scarf over his nose. Carver shifts his kneeling position, breaking a dry branch under his boot with a clear crack. The sound of snow compressed under German infantry boots comes from the tree line, 10 meters from the hole. Dark shapes moving between the pine trunks force Carver to lower the binoculars close to the ground. The handset in Carver's hand releases a high squeal, forcing him to press the device against his thigh to reduce the volume. Mercer uses his hand to shorten each section of the SCR-300 antenna to the lowest level to eliminate its shadow on the snow. The roar of the tank engine completely covers the wind and makes the ground at the bottom of the hole shake continuously. Carver's breath forms thick white clouds that fully blur the binocular lenses. Carver quickly wipes the lenses with his coat flap, leaving a smeared dirty streak across the center of the view. The handset's coiled cord catches on a coat button, pulling the device away from Carver's ear as he leans. Carver frees the cord by hand, creating the sound of plastic rubbing against wool in the tight space. The lead Tiger stops and lowers its gun toward the U.S. infantry defensive line at the edge of the village below. Carver raises the handset to chin level, his thumb beside the push-to-talk button without making a press. Mercer grips Carver's shoulder and points at German infantry footprints pressed deep in the snow directly behind the hole. A chunk of earth thrown up by mortar fire strikes the handset speaker grill, and the static cuts off sharply. Carver freezes his entire body and holds his breath as compressed footsteps on snow sound right at the edge of the foxhole. The steel tracks of the Tiger crush the ice at the rim of the foxhole and throw snow back into Carver's face. Harold J. Mercer, technician 5th grade with the U.S. Army Field Artillery, uses both hands to force Carver's shoulders down to keep his steel helmet from rising above the snow. Earth and gravel slide from the lip of the hole and pack into the speaker grill of the SCR-300 handset in Carver's hand. The tank turret turns toward the U.S. infantry company positioned in the Valley Trench. German infantry move in a horizontal line across the snow and close the distance to the defensive line below. The battery gauge needle on the SCR-300 drops straight into the red zone as the radio static suddenly cuts out. Carver repeatedly presses the push-to-talk button, but his thumb only slips across the freezing plastic surface. Mercer thrusts his hand inside Carver's wool coat and grips his stiffened hand hard. The frayed coiled cord stretches to its limit as Carver lifts himself to look through the collapsing snow gap. Road salt and melting snow seep into the casing and create sharp popping sounds in the speaker. German infantry direct machine gun fire toward the hillside, sending snow into Carver's eyes and binoculars. Carver presses the SCR-300 handset tight to his lips and braces his elbow against the earth wall to steady the device. Mercer covers one of Carver's ears with his hand to block the wind and the roaring engine. "Coordinates. Danger close. Right here." Carver shouts into the handset through heavy static. The other end responds with a sharp click and then goes silent inside the electromagnetic interference. Carver shouts again through rapid breath that clouds the handset microphone grill. "Oh, confirm. My coordinates. Fire." Carver orders and forces his thumb into the push-to-talk button until it sinks deep. Mercer yanks the antenna downward and pulls Carver's head down between his knees. A high-pitched sound wave tears through the air from the artillery position behind them. The ground heaves violently, sending earth from the whole wall down to bury half of the SCR-300 radio. A flash of light bursts directly overhead and blinds Carver for a moment. Air pressure slams into Carver's chest and drives all breath out of his lungs. The repeated explosion throws Carver against the side of the hole, smashing his shoulder into a buried rock. Carver's hearing cuts out completely, leaving only a long, ringing tone and the sensation of liquid leaking from his ear. A heavy mass of snow and earth collapses, fully burying Carver's left leg at the bottom of the hole. The SCR-300 handset flies from his hand, strikes the transmitter casing, and gains another long crack. Thick black powder smoke pours into the hole, making Carver cough violently and cover his mouth with his coat flap. Mercer lies flat under the fallen earth, his hand still gripping the radio cord attached to Carver's back. Shock waves from the next artillery rounds pound directly into the ground beneath the hole. Carver opens his eyes to see blackened snow falling onto his face and the surrounding space reduced to dark haze. He reaches through the cold mud and touches the frayed coiled cord of the handset assembly. Carver pulls the handset toward himself and sees the plastic casing warped and covered with metal fragments from the blast. He wipes dirt from the push-to-talk button with his finger as it remains jammed from impact pressure. Mercer moves his arm, knocks earth from his shoulder, and crawls toward Carver to check for injuries. Firelight from exploding debris at the crossroads casts red streaks across the gray snow around the hole's rim. Carver tries to pull his left leg free from the collapsed soil, but pain drives his body back down into the hole. He holds the cracked handset tight against his chest and feels weak static still vibrating in the speaker grill. Carver holds his breath and listens to the chaotic sounds of artillery striking close on the hillside as snow begins to fill the cracks in the casing. Carver lies motionless at the bottom of the collapsed hole, his hand locked around the plastic evidence in the Ardennes snowstorm. The radio static stops completely as the SCR-300 battery is fully exhausted in the cold air. Robert J. Carver sits upright on a hospital bed, the blanket lying flat where his left leg should be, while the SCR-300 handset rests on the bedside table with dried mud still clinging to the speaker grill. A thin crack runs from the grill to the lower edge of the casing, and when Carver touches it once, he pulls his fingers back as the cold plastic numbs his skin. Wind slips through the window's seam and feeds into the grill as a narrow distortion, forcing Carver to shift his shoulder and press his elbow tighter against his ribs. He lifts the handset and presses the push-to-talk button once. A short burst of static escapes and stops. A nurse turns her head, and Carver lowers the handset, setting it flat on the table with the grill facing down. The casing leaves a faint damp mark on the wood, which he wipes away with his sleeve before moving the handset closer to the wall. Years later, snow gathers along the outside edge of his living room window, and the glass hums lightly under wind pressure. The handset lies on the table beside him, the plastic colder than the room when he touches it. Boots pass in the hallway outside his door, and Carver pauses with the handset in his hand before lowering it until the casing rests against his thigh. The television continues to hum, and its sound leaks into the speaker grill as a thin, uneven vibration. Carver does not adjust the volume. He brushes salt grains from the grill slots with a small brush and watches each grain fall onto the table. One lands near his thumb, and he moves it away with the edge of his fingernail. A grandchild reaches toward the coiled cord, and Carver pulls the handset back before the fingers make contact. The cord slips across his wrist and tightens slightly. He loosens it and places the handset farther from the edge of the table, remaining seated until the room grows quiet again. The handset stays where he left it, the speaker grill turned downward, releasing no sound. Robert J. Carver kneels on cold grass before the gravestone engraved with Harold J. Mercer's name. Snow lies thin across the marble, collecting in the grooves of each letter. The cemetery is quiet, except for distant road hum and the soft hiss of wind moving between bare branches. He lifts the SCR 300 handset assembly with both hands. The weight of the old plastic presses heavily into his wrinkled palms, heavier than it should be for something that no longer works. Deep cracks run along the body of the unit, each line clearly visible under the dull winter sky. Carver lowers his chin and presses the casing tight to his wool coat chest, shielding it from the wind as if the device could still feel cold. A stream of breath leaves his mouth and spreads into pale white haze over the speaker grill. The dirt in the mesh darkens as moisture settles into it. The frayed sections of coiled cord show their copper core like thin, exposed veins. The handset remains completely silent. No static, no pulse. His thumb rests on the push-to-talk button, still jammed deep inside the casing since the Ardennes. He does not press it. He only holds it, exactly where it once mattered. Snow begins to land on the faded olive strap. Carver wipes it away with his coat flap, slow and careful. He lowers the device onto the stone ledge of the gravestone, but keeps hold of the cord so it cannot slide down. A faint vibration from the road behind the cemetery travels through the ground. Snowflakes on the stone face shift slightly. Carver holds his breath by instinct and raises his free hand to cover the speaker grill. His eyes stay on the warped plastic, not on the carved name beneath it. A thin, metallic sound moves through the trees and disappears. Carver freezes completely, the handset suspended between his hands in the posture of a forward observer in cover. Snow gathers on his shoulder. He does not shake it away. He tightens his grip on the cracked plastic evidence and remains motionless before the gravestone, honoring his comrade not with words, but by keeping what remains exactly as it is.